Okay, so the first question will be for Sister Yvonne. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Okay, so let's have this question here. A microphone will come over to you now.
Assalamu alaikum. I would like to say thank you very much for the enlightening and informative speech that you have given to us. My question can be actually for both of you, so it's up to you. I believe you can share the answer together. My first question, since you converted to Islam and up to this day, what have you learned from Islam? And do you think it is worth mentioning to convert to Islam? This is my first question. My second question is, have you thought to make your stories as a movie, but just like to be shown for the public, or a short story to be just like, just distributed in the market, just like to let the people know exactly some of the facts that, or some of the brightness aspects that your stories have involved? Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. The one thing that Islam has taught me is to be tolerant and by being more tolerant, I've become much more thoughtful and less reactionary to things that have happened. Certainly since I've become a Muslim, some non-Muslims out there think that they've got every right to come up and abuse me verbally and be quite insulting. And this has been quite an eye-opener for me because all my life I've been able to move around quite anonymously, and as when I was a practicing Christian, as I said to some friends, I got away with it for years without anybody knowing that I was a Christian. So I remember the day that I took my Shahada after I said my declaration of faith. A friend said to me, now your troubles are really going to start and you will be challenged. And I certainly have, and I'm quite surprised at how tolerant I have become over, as I say, random strangers coming up and being quite rude at times, but I try and use that to turn around and talk to them about Islam just in the way that the brother mentioned. My story about the Taliban was in a book, and it was published and it sold 20,000 copies, but when I started to move towards Islam and the publisher started getting orders for 1,000 copies from Islamic bookshops, you'd think that most of the publishers would be delighted at such large orders. And when they realized I was moving towards Islam, I'm afraid the print runs stopped. And so I'm looking for a new publisher if anybody wants to make me an offer.
You should repeat out to answer the question.
Briefly, yeah. I mean, just simply, Islam gave me purpose. This is the greatest gift I've learned from Islam, is reason. Having a purpose, having a vision, having a plan for life. Everything I do now is with a unique intent purpose to please the creator of all that exists and to do something which is going to benefit me not only in this life but in the next life. That's really uniquely changed me. Because once you lose vision and purpose in life, then you've pretty much lost everything. This is why people turn to drugs, alcohol, and so forth. So that's a great gift. But as far as my story becoming a movie or a book, I don't really think my story to be that meritorious, to deserve being a camera crew or a publisher or things of that nature. If anyone ever came to me with that idea, I would be more than willing to dictate. I'm not much of a writer. I tried to write, but things flow more freely from my mouth than they do from my hand. And that's just how some people are. I don't know why. The only thing that flows good from my hands is karate chops and breaking through. That's not really going to do anybody any good. So we'll see. You know, God willing, all our Iron Man knows the future.
I'm trying to take a question. If you could say it very briefly as well, please.
My question is, whatever happened to your friend Benjamin? Did you see him again?
Not full-blown atheist, but very questioning about his existence.
We need someone like you.
Right.
Is there a contact
Okay. Next question for you all, please. If you could please raise your hand. If you could give it to that gentleman over there.
Regarding the British embassy's reaction when you were captive in Afghanistan, what was their reaction that you were there for 6-7 days? What they were doing? And secondly, what was your reaction of your family, relatives, and friends when you declared that you became Muslim? Thank you.
I really don't know what the Foreign Office were doing about my detention. I know that my mother was giving press conferences every morning, noon and night, and when I was captured, it was right at the beginning of the Labour Party conference, which Alistair Campbell, Tony Blair's spin doctor, had been carefully preparing for months. And suddenly this angry grandmother from County Durham was taking all the headlines, and they were trying to shut her up. Jack Straw called her and said, "You've got to stop doing these broadcasts, you're endangering your daughter's life," when in fact she was humanising my case, and her daily press conferences were quite amazing. When I was handed over, the Taliban were told that they could only, I wished I'd kept the note, it was written, I'm not quite sure what language, whether it was Dari or Pashto, but it was a written note from Mullah Omar saying that I had to be handed over only to the British, and the British didn't turn up for the handover, and so after many delays, when I got over across no man's land, there was nobody there from the British Embassy. They did catch up that evening, and I stayed in the High Commission in Islamabad that evening, and woke up the next morning to listen to Donald Rumsfeld on television saying, "We now have air superiority over Afghanistan." And I just thought, when did the Taliban have an air force? I must have missed that one. As for the reaction of my family and friends, my family were delighted that I stopped drinking, stopped smoking, and stopped clubbing and being a party girl, and they were really delighted that I had embraced Islam and that this was the new Yvonne, until I put on a hijab. And it was like, what have you put that on for? And you're going to become a fanatic. And the reaction was really negative once I put on the hijab. But you know, it's I got used to the idea of wearing it. It took more than a year for me to do that. And I just said to them, you know, it's an obligation, take it or leave it. I know what my obligation is, you know, why should a piece of material alter the way that you think about me? And it's quite interesting. And for anybody who doesn't wear a hijab, whether you're a Muslim or not, it's interesting to put one on for a day and see the challenges that that Muslims face, and it is quite an experience.
Maybe we can have a question for Yusha, please. Lady down there at the top.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We're both with you. We are really proud of you, and you make us feel that we are really very bad about reaching, you know, Islam to everybody. And I found most of the reverts to Islam, they are the best at it, not us, unfortunately. We don't know how to do it. We do gross things on ourselves, but alhamdulillah, I found that our children are much, much better than us. We try to do good things, but we still not like you doing da'wah and doing calling for Islam. I would like to ask you, do you speak, or did you contact those people in Afghanistan when they captured you and told you, and you told them about you become a Muslim? Do they know that you become a Muslim after that?
Yes, they do. I've been back to Afghanistan many times, and the last time I was there, I still work as a journalist, and I don't go embedded with the military, and I usually find the easiest way is just to get a local driver and just put the burqa back on again and move around Afghanistan. And on the last trip, we got caught in crossfire between the Taliban and the local police, and this was on the road to Gardez. And the driver stopped the car, and I'd been on one of these BBC hostile training courses, and they say that the first thing you do is get out of the car and run away from the gunfire. And what I did, I got out of the car and heard the machine gun fire, and it was actually coming from the Afghan police. And I ran away from one set of machine gun fire, and it must have been while the Taliban were reloading, and I went and hid behind this building, only to bump straight into some Taliban soldiers. And they started shouting at me. I didn't know what they were saying, and then my cameraman came running round following me, and they got even more agitated when they saw him. And then my guide came running round, and he shouted, "It's okay, they're filming," and she was captured by the Taliban and she converted to Islam, mashallah. He was saying this in Pashto. And they'd heard of me, and they got quite excited, and then got on the phone to somewhere else. And then we had the Taliban press officer, Mr. Mujahid, he's called, phoned my guide on his mobile and said, "Is that really Yvonne Ridley with you?" And he said yes, and he said, "Well, you won't have any problems from us, and have a safe journey, and tell her thank you for telling the truth about us." So that was quite a nice experience, but always have somebody with you who speaks their language.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, this gentleman here.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
My first question is from both of you there. Since both of you had, the other edge in the Christianity, can you particularly tell why Muslims are so much disliked by Christians or other religions? And second question is from Yusha. Since you have analyzed the Islam and you have found that it is ultimate religion, but can you particularly tell why Muslims are not aligned with Islam and why Muslims are not acting upon the teaching of Islam? Thank you.
You get the two terribly difficult questions. They both have a lot of spectrums and a lot of different vantage points to them. I don't really like to group everyone together. So when we talk about Christianity, I'm going to talk about mainstream Christianity, Trinitarian Christianity, because to say that there's all one group is not correct. When it comes to Christianity, why Christianity and Islam have so many problems is because of the very simple fact about Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. Because for us, what they say about Jesus is blasphemy, and it is idol worship, and it is unforgivable sin. And for them, what we say about Jesus is blasphemy and is unforgivable, and so there's a big problem there. It's a standoff where it meets at Jesus, peace be upon him. What the world thinks about Islam is because of, unfortunately, the misinformation that is represented in the media and through the major media sources. The greatest weapons that are used against human beings are not, planes and guns and bombs. It's the real WMDs of the world, and weapons of mass destruction that play on the minds of human beings to redirect them away from the truth. I mean, this is really wrong. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who can be more wrong than one who invents a lie against Allah, while he himself is being called towards Islam. So this is very much the worst of evils. Now, if I knew why Muslims as a whole, all were not following the religion of Islam and what they could do better, then I would be distributing that like it was a plague pill. I would be doing my best to let everybody know, because that is very multifaceted. But the very outset of it, it all revolves around us forgetting our purpose. I mean, when any human being falls away from the truth, it is because of losing lack of purpose. Unfortunately, anytime you see someone who has the truth, they have been given this beautiful religion, they have been given the guidance of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they're not to follow it, they really have lost touch with their purpose, which is to one day meet their Creator. Because with that purpose in mind, you will then seek the most gracious route to that destination, because every road leads there. No matter whether you're a Jew, whether you're a Hindu, whether you're a Buddhist, whether you're atheist, all routes lead to you standing in front of the Creator one day. But there is only one right way to make that journey, and that is the straight path of Islam. So while Muslims themselves are not trying their hardest to do that, they have lost that vision and purpose themselves. So we have to remind ourselves of that very clearly. We always stand to the Creator. The only question that will be asked of us is, how did you get here? What road did you take to meet this day? That will be the real testing point of human.
The brother's right. I mean, you can't generalize. And 14 days into the Egyptian revolution, I went to Tahrir Square and saw with my own eyes Christians and Muslims coming together. And this was, this to me was something wonderful. And of course, the Egyptian revolution will go on to achieve many things, but to me, sectarianism died in Tahrir Square. The day that Christians stood around Muslims to protect them while they prayed, and then a few days later, on the Sunday, Muslims returned the compliment and stood around the Christians to protect them while they prayed. And that whole revolution, I think, will be remembered for the death of sectarianism in Egypt, and I just hope that that will spread right across the world. What has also emerged now, and this is quite shocking, is that the Interior Minister in Egypt has now been arrested after it emerged that he was running a dirty tricks unit in Egypt, which caused the horrific bombing of the Coptic Church. And you know, the Minister of the Interior and Mubarak ran to the media and accused Muslim fundamentalists of from Palestine have been behind the bombing of the Coptic church on New Year's Eve, we now know that that was a big lie, and that was actually carried out by Mubarak's government. So I don't think in Egypt anyway, Christians and Muslims will ever allow anybody to create that fitna, that mischief between them, and they've come together as one, and that's one element of the Arab Revolution that I really hope spreads quickly across the world.
Okay, we're going to take 3 last questions from the audience. So can we have... Keep your hand up.
How did your parents direct consent become Islam, and how did your friend Musa?
My parents, when my grandfather passed away, I wasn't really in contact with my mother at the time I accepted Islam. I reconnected with her later. You have to understand, I didn't really tell anybody in the beginning because I knew that my grandmother would possibly have a heart attack and my father might kill me. So I kind of let my actions do the talking in the beginning. You know, I really kind of really let Islam sink into me, because at the same time, I was coming from a perspective that I did not know how to argue my position. I was a new Muslim. I knew I believed it, but being able to argue my position was impossible. I had no idea. So it was not until I kind of gained a little bit more information to be able to argue my position, not only with my speech, but with my actions, that I really unfolded Islam to them. And once that took place, they were very accepting of it. And honestly, my father was very proud now that I'm Muslim. And he's very, very honored about some of the work that I do. Yet, even though he himself has not accepted Islam yet, I'm guiding him. But Musa, I don't know. I've never heard from him or seen him again. But I hope on the day of judgment, he will receive the reward of every single good action that I've done. And every good action that I have prompted another individual to do or to accept Islam, he is going to reap that benefit if he indeed dies believing in the worship of the Lord. Just, I hope that can become a means of forgiveness for him in the judgment.
If we can have 2 last questions. Yes, if we can have one.
Since the 70s, I have seen a very bright future for Islam in the UK. I had fantastic experience, and I think the West, specifically in the UK where I lived, was a good environment to practice Islam freely and to propagate Islam. We have gone a long way since that time. I think Islam, I believe, did very well. The West is tightening the noose, and we can hear the Prime Minister talking about a war against multiculturalism or whatever. So, how do you see the future of Islam in the West as indigenous people, if you like, in the UK or in the United States?
I'm greatly encouraged in the UK and Europe about the future of Islam, because one of the things that I have noticed is the more that we are attacked, the more that we are squeezed, the more poison that is poured into our direction, the stronger we become as Muslims. And I think that we're entering almost a renaissance for Islam at the moment, and I think that that somehow even the worst things that have happened to Islam have actually turned round to the benefit. I mean, from the horrors of 9/11, a lot of Westerners like me thought, what the hell is going on in this religion, and started reading the Holy Quran to find out why does it promote violence, why does it do this, that, and they've read it and have been absolutely bowled over by it, and that is why today Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. And I think that what is happening in the Arab world, the People's Revolution, it's not an Islamic revolution, but people can only face down bullets and can only look down the barrel of a gun if they believe in God. And I think that there's a lot of Muslims in the Arab world that have been able to rise up because of their faith in God. And when you get people who are mightier than armies and mightier than the weapons that have been pointed at them, it makes you realize just how strong we all can be when we are united. And I'm hoping that when all the revolutions, when the people come together to draw up their new constitutions and their new charters, that there will be an Islamic flavour in there. But as I say, I think we're entering a very, very exciting period for Islam, and we all have to hold on tight to the rope. And at the end of the day, you know, it's what we do in this life, this very, very short life. It's the blink of an eye when you look at things in context and history. What we do in this life will count for the most important phase, which is our next life. And so, I think we've got everything to look forward to, and great challenges to prove, that our worth for the next life.
When it comes to the U.S., I spend as much time abroad as I do at home, unfortunately. Not my family, not so happy about that, but anyway, I'm an enduring optimist, but a stark realist at the same time. And for sure, I know that the future holds that Islam will take a prevalence. I mean, this is the promise from the Creator, so we cannot deny that. But at the same time, I know that the more pressure that is put on the Muslims, that they are beginning to slowly come back to a realization that we need something different. You know, the system quo is not going to work, and the status quo today is not going to work. And one thing that we have learned from history, unfortunately, up until this point, is that we have not really learned a lot from history. That is a very unfortunate fact. The main thing we learned from our history is that we haven't learned very much. And it is my real sincere hope that with all of this turmoil taking place all over the Muslim world, is beginning to hit home in America very well with an incident that just happened to some of my dear brothers in California, in Santa Clara and Santa Ana in Southern California, where there was a huge protest screaming the young Muslim children and families. But anyway, I hope with all of this pressure that we return back to our Islam, because the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, very clearly, authentically said that when you become satisfied with the transactions of Iman, meaning gaining illicit money from this life and chasing the tails of cows and gaining only what you can from this life, and you abandon striving for the sake of God, then Allah will place upon you humiliation, and it will not be removed from you until you go back to your deen. So this is my stark hope and reality, is that all of these revolutions that are taking place, my sincerest opinion is that if what comes in light of that is not the pure teachings of Islam and the pure ruling of Allah's law on the earth, then it is misguided and it is incorrect. Because to replace and put people in harm's way to not establish the truth is a waste. It is a waste of effort. And in Islam, we're not allowed to waste anything. We don't waste time, we don't waste effort, we don't waste lives, we don't waste energy. Everything is done only to please the Creator. And the Creator will not be pleased unless we submit to His way of life and implement, as Allah says, هُوَ الَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى دِينِ كُلِّهِ. That He did not send His messenger with the religion with the guidance and the religion of truth, except but to make it prevalent over every other way of life, no matter how much anyone is displeased with that. So it's my humble opinion that I really hope, I'm an optimist at the core of my heart, because I know that Allah is in control of everything. Allah wallahi ma sha'afak. But it is my sincere hope that Muslims take advantage of this to show the world the beauty of Islam and the pure teachings of this religion to the world. And if we don't put Islam into practice and don't implement it purely, then we're failing in that job. If it becomes a half Islam, a partial Islam, that's not acceptable to the Creator. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu udkhulu fi silmi kaffa. To enter into the religion of Islam with complete entirety, not halfway, not a foot in, not a foot out, not a piece in, not a piece out, completely. And that is something that, as a really small last statement, so I don't take too much time, that's something the world should not fear, and we as Muslims should not be afraid to tell the world that we want the rule of Islam. Yes, the pure rule of Islam. And anyone who thinks that is a negative connotation, then you have been given way too much misinformation. For you to tell me that a just society, that upholds the rights of all human beings, that establishes the right of the poor over the weak, that establishes the poor over the rich, that establishes the right of the weak over the strong, that protects the orphans and the children and the women and the wayfarer, and everyone has their due society, and that within this law no one is allowed to tyrannize over another or take one's property without right, or to take one's life without right. To tell me that that way of life would be wrong to give to humanity is complete, utter, almost insanity. And this is Islam at its core. So this is the rule that we want, a just, upright society, and that only comes from Islam. To say that comes from any other way of life is a very, very dangerous statement for a Muslim to make. And I adjure you, brothers and sisters, for a Muslim to say that any other way of life is acceptable to live under other than Islam is a very, very dangerous statement that leads you down a very dangerous road. And inshallah ta'ala, we all wake up to the reality and the truth of our situation, and Allah musta'an, may Allah help us all. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, we're going to take the last and final question, please, from the audience. Okay, last and final question for this gentleman.
If there is one last thing you want us to take away today, what would it be? And the question is to both of you.
Probably for me, it's one of the first lessons that I learned as a new Muslim, and that is to fear no one and nothing but Allah. And having that total belief and total trust in God will protect you in so many ways. And a lot of you might think, well, yes, I fear Allah, and it's just that ability to know that to put your faith wholly into Allah, and that has given me personally the courage to be able to stand up and say things and do things, and just know that that I will be protected. I'm not reckless enough to put on a blindfold and walk down a motorway the wrong way. I wouldn't do something like that. But not having fear, and this is something I guess that I learned as well on this journey to Islam. And I said right at the beginning that the biggest weapon of the oppressor is the oppressed's mind. And if you have no fear for anything or anyone but Allah, then you are a free person. You are truly free, and nobody can intimidate or make your life a misery, because you've got the big fella there for you, and so that's the one thing that I would say: go home tonight and fear nothing and no one but Allah.
If you're asking me for a short, concise advice, then I have to refer to a statement that was also presented by this to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is in the collection of Imam Tirmidhi, the Muslim Ahmad,
so I'm really the last narrative to us that once a man came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he asked him, give me an advice that I will not need to ask anyone after you about it, and it will be sufficient enough to take me to paradise. I mean, this is a spot question. You're asking me for advice. Give me something that will suffice me to not have anyone ask anyone after you, and it will take me to Jannah. What did the Prophet ﷺ tell the man? قُلْ آمَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ. Say, I believe in Allah, and remain steadfast upon that. The man said, okay, that's a little too easy. You came off of that just like it was nothing. Give me something better than that. Give me something else. The Prophet ﷺ said, قُلْ آمَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ. Say, you believe in Allah, and then remain firm upon that. The man said, okay, I heard you. Give me another one. He said, قُلْ آمَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ. Say you believe in Allah, and then remain firm upon that. This is what this ummah really means. It's not only to come back to their religion, but to remain firm upon it. But to remain firm upon it, to remain steadfast. And you know the beauty of remaining steadfast? The beauty of remaining steadfast is a verse that comes to us from the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, those who say, Rabbuna Allah, our Lord is Allah, and then they remain steadfast, that will descend upon them at their death, angels, who will meet every single human being. And death is the worst time. Death is the most frightening experience we will ever face when we meet the angel of death. But Allah says about those who say they believe in Allah and remain steadfast, that those angels who come to them will say to them, do not be afraid today, and do not have any fear of us, nor grieve, but abshir. For what? Abshir bi jannatin lati kuntum tu'adun. Have glad tidings of Jannah, which you have been promised as a reward for what you have done. So this is the only advice I can give you, is to believe in your Lord and remain steadfast upon it. Like the sister said, do not be shaken, do not be frightened, do not fear, do not have any worries, because we as a Muslim know that everything is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His affair is perfect, His decisions are just, and everything He is distributed to His creation is in due proportion. So whatever comes to us is for the best of us.